We are 6 months through the year, 6 months gone, 6 months to go. For anyone who does intuitive work, this is the moment to reevaluate how this calendar year is going for us. I'm going to do an oracle deck reading, but this time with 4 different decks representing my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual selves. I'll show you how I picked the decks and how I lay them down. My goal for you is for you to be able to do this for yourself, this snapshot of your year across these 4 decks, and be able to pull out some things that will help guide your next 6 months. I'll never let you go. Why does this reset matter? The first 3 months of the year are usually about looking back. What did we accomplish? What didn't we accomplish? How did we feel about it? And then we spend the next 3 months kind of goal setting. What do I want to get out of this year, and how do I plant those seeds to make them happen? Right about the time we're at right now, end of June, early July, we start to refine those plans. We start to accelerate the growth that we were expecting. We also start to notice patterns around things that are coalescing in our life and try to amplify them. Advanced intuitives would benefit from an audit of what happened in the last 6 months and what am I expecting in the next 6 months. These are all of my decks. These are the decks I said no to, and these are the decks I said yes to for this card pull. Why did I say no to certain decks? What I was looking for in a deck was one that would have a representation of either physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional within the cards. Some of these were more geared towards animals and dreaming, or astrology, or for example, I've got the funny one I did in my last reading called the Dead Inside deck. This one did not feel like it would really necessarily align to my physical, mental, or emotional self, but if I was pulling this for my sister, I would 100% use this for her mental state. She's a funny one. But I looked through all of these and kind of said no, yes, to kind of paging through the cards and saying, do they align to any of those 4 pillars? Some of my favorite decks are in here, and they didn't align to what I wanted. So let me show you what I did pull. For my physical self, I started with the Spirit Allies deck. Why? Because when I opened up these cards and paged through everything, there's a lot of very physical attributes to these cards. The majority of them are rocks, plants, animals, astrological signs, things that really resonate with physicality versus something that feels more inspirational, for example. Even though the name says Spirit Allies, geared towards a spirit guide journey, this felt to me like it had to do more with my physical self. Then I've used this deck before here on YouTube. This is a Life Happens Oracle deck. When I paged through some of these cards, they felt like mental states. There were positive and negatives in here. A lot of things that have to do with how the mind works and mental states. And so this felt like a good place to go with the mental part of this pull. This Rose Oracle deck I chose for the emotional part, basically because the pictures on these cards are almost abstract in their emotionality. None of them have kind of like a neutral scene to them. They're just so rich and lush because to me, emotion is more picture than words. So this deck felt like it aligned to an emotional journey. I chose this Nature's Whispers deck. This deck is great for all sorts of things. It can be used for a general reading, past, present, future, anything you've got. But there's something about the images on this card that feel very forward-looking, and I'm most interested in a spiritual journey go forward in the next 6 months, and this felt like it aligned. All of the cards here feel like a reminder for something that you should be doing. I have picked my cards. I've pulled 2 cards for physical out of this Spirit Allies deck. At the beginning of this year, I was recovering from foot surgery, so I was still in a boot actually in January and early February. And so I feel like there's definitely a delineation between the first half and the second half of the year. So I pulled first 6 months and second 6 months for myself physically. For the mental deck, I again felt like my mental state was very different from the last 6 months, and I'm hoping that the next 6 months is a little bit different. So I'm going to pick 2 cards here. I'm kind of layering this based on how I have felt in my own body and mind in the last year. You could pick past, present, future for this as well. You could pick just 1 card if you wanted to, depending on when the deck is in front of you, how you feel it will best be laid out. This next section is the emotional section, and I've actually picked out 3 cards here. I've had kind of a bit of an emotional roller coaster across friends, family, spirituality, physical self. There's just a lot going on in my life at the moment. So I felt like this needed to give me kind of a multi-layered effect of what the year is going to feel like. I have one card for spirituality, and the reason why is that I have felt like I've done a ton of work spiritually in the last couple of years and know what my connection to spirit has been in the last 6 months. And I just want to look forward. I want to know where they want me to focus in the next 6 months. I like to flip over the cards, look at the words, look at the images, look at the colors first, and then go back into the deck or the booklet that the author and illustrator provide and see if there's any extra little bits that they want to talk about. First card is physically in the first 6 months of the year, cacao. So this is the plant actually that makes chocolate. I think that's kind of funny because I can't really eat chocolate. It's about limitations for sure. I can't eat chocolate because it gives me migraines. So this is kind of saying I've been limited, which is true. I have had some run-ins with some nasty migraines in the last 6 months. But also what's resonating here is if you know anything about the cacao plant, like the chocolate bean part is like on the inner part and there's like a hard outer shell that you have to crack. So it's interesting that like I'm building up this hard outer shell around a foot that's really sensitive, around a head that's really sensitive. So this is really resonating with me, this idea of hard outer shell and lovely ooey gooiness on the inside. But also I think it's funny that Spirit's giving me a card of something I actually can't eat physically. Let's look at the next 6 months. Oh, goodness. I've actually never gotten this card before. It's the hummingbird card. It's absolutely stunning. I love this color palette. I would use this any day, all day on an Aura Pora painting. The idea of teal and purple and blue and white and even the navy is just stunning. This is really resonating with me also. This feels very positive. And I also like that my physical self is surrounded by others. Here I have, like if I think of myself as this bird, there's another bird and then 2 flowers. To me, this feels like my family. And so physically surrounded by my immediate family is just so lovely. It also feels like I've also often used the reference of like I'm a bird launching little baby birds out of my nest as a mom and growing little seeds. So this reference to nature and that physicality of that is also important. I also like that it's kind of like under the stars and we're all kind of traveling, but we're traveling in different directions, doing different things, but we're all still together. Let's move on to mental state. So last 6 months mental state. Responsibility. This card looks actually more dramatic than I would have thought just the word is. I think it's interesting that, you know, these people are holding hands and they're kind of like walking off the path, or the path is kind of crumbling around them and they're kind of have these guided hands behind them. I have definitely felt the weight of responsibility in the last 6 months. Let's look ahead to the next 6 months. Oh, goodness. Woo! This is one of those cards where you go, I just hope that mentally I'm not going to be a giant mess. And this is good news. I love that it's just good news. And also that we've got these windmills here. I think that's really cool. I love that I have birds here and birds here, kind of this message of birds intertwining. Looking at the booklets, this cacao plant is in reference to small luxuries. So having chocolate or tea before bed or reading a really good book. So that's interesting that that's where that goes, because I do think I had to kind of reorient myself without having the ability to walk for a few months, but then also kind of get back into my physical body in the way I wanted to. With the hummingbird, it says, I am happy. I will take it. Let's all be happy about my physical self in the next 6 months. It has been a whirlwind since COVID, and I will take a 6-month time frame of just feeling like I'm happy. So the Life Happens deck actually does not have a booklet with it, so we're just going to have to go with how I felt. Moving on to the emotional self. This is the one where I kind of wanted to look at all 3 cards together. So let's flip them over. The Fertile Void, Lineage of the Rose, oof, and the Crowning. These all feel really big and powerful. Like I said, this deck is emotional. It actually feels like the Fertile Void was kind of beginning of the year. There's this idea of inner winter, which happened for me in actual winter, of resting and having patience and kind of percolating ideas. And then I feel like there's been, you know, maybe not even just yet, but this idea of initiation, thresholds, and rebirth. I love that idea. This is such a powerful card. I also love a seat at the table. Like, who doesn't want a seat at all the tables? I feel like I have to say I'm not pregnant or having any more children, because anytime any woman gets a birth card, it's automatically you must be having more kids, but that is not my case. Anytime I get birth now, it really has more to do with birth of an idea or rebirth of self. And that, I will say, emotionally really checks with me over the last 6 months, and hope that it continues even further into the next 6 months. And then this lineage of the rose, moved by the goddess here for this soul call and gather. I have just felt over the last 6 months that emotionally I needed to gather with others. This idea of doing things collectively, I hope continues into the next 6 months as well. So this idea of just going from quiet to birthing something to gathering together, I hope that that's where my next 6 months go. Finally, I'm going to turn over my spiritual card. Laughter. I have actually gotten this card once or twice before. And this is spirit basically saying childlike wonder, right? Like, get on your Pegasus, get your magic wand, put your wings on, and go run around the clouds with your bestie. Love that my family showed up here. I love that my community showed up here, and that what spirit wants me to do is just go laugh. There's so much to be said for the enjoyment of life while we're here on this earth plane versus existing in spirit, but there's also just laughter to be had in spirit, which is sometimes why I do funny things with spirit, because it's not supposed to be this relationship that's just one-sided and oh so like heavy. Like, it should feel light. It should feel like we're laughing in the clouds. To be honest, the words that stood out here in the fertile void and the crowning both were about surrendering. One, to this idea of letting an end lead to a new beginning, and then the crowning, surrendering to the idea of something new and not knowing all the answers. It's almost like these two cards tied together, and for that really resonates with my year-long quest of starting over career-wise, etc. And then the lineage of the rose, I feel like, is actually a bit more of a spiritual card, which leads into this laughter. It's basically like a calling card from spirit saying you're being called back to the goddess, the mother earth. Every time I go out in nature, it's like the best. And also that this is my soul's calling, working with spirit, which 100% agree with that. Let's look at Nature's Whispers deck. Ooh, these like to jump, Nature's Whispers. I love that about them. They're very energetic. Laughter, this is about breaking up stagnant energy. So just the idea that spiritually laughing just helps move the energy. What a beautiful version of that. It's like, just watch like a silly movie and you'll get yourself right back spiritually to the place where things are moving and grooving. I never thought about that, but take that. That's new advice. So if you're stuck, go laugh the crap out of yourself. Overall, I think this reading really resonated with me. I don't feel the need to pull any additional cards. So if you were going to do this for yourself and you got a little confused anywhere along the way, my suggestion would be to ask a specific question and pull a card related to that question. For instance, if I didn't understand this responsibility card, I could pull another and say, what's this responsibility about? Or where should I go from here with this responsibility? Or who are my helpers? Feel free to interpret these results as they stand, but also kind of as a collective. As I mentioned, this lineage of the rose feels like a spiritual card, and this good news card also that should be mental also feels spiritual as well. And then this hummingbird physical card also feels like an emotional card. So how would I use this card pull for the next 6 months? I would look at these on the whole and also ask myself, what feels like the priority? What feels like I need to amplify something? What feels like it's dying a death that needs to be let go? So in my case here, I think it's very clear the weight of the responsibility I need to let go of, because that is also attached to this kind of like fertile void card. These two things I need to let go of. And instead, Spirit wants me to kind of sit in the next 6 months in this realm. So these 5 cards across. When you do this for yourself, you can kind of rearrange the cards at the end. Once you've kind of given yourself those pillars of my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self, you can then see like, how do the cards feel like they should go together. And for me, this feels like my calling card for the next 6 months. The second half of the year is not about starting over. It's about refining what you've already got started. And as I worked through all of these decks, I felt like it gave me a bit more clarity on where I had been and where I was going. Especially with the weight of the world around us, this idea of lightness in this reading really resonated with me. And it's a reminder that that's how I should enter the next 6 months. Now, I don't usually do a ton of card readings in my private readings, but if this is something that you feel pulled to and feel like you would like me to help you out with, please reach out via email. I'm happy to sit with you and do a card pull for you or help you interpret one for yourself. If you've got quick questions around, I got this and I don't understand it, drop them in the comments below and I'll respond back. I'm Emily Snyder. As always, stay open, stay curious, stay connected with Connected Intuition. Lovely to meet you all. Have a great next 6 months. Never let you go.